What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode on Code with Annie. Thank you so much for the support so far, and continuing on with the Java Fundamental series. Today we're going to start with a new topic in Java, which is the exception handling. Now, exception handling is a very crucial part in any programming language, and Java is not much of an exception here, no pun intended. But we'll take a look at it in multiple videos because the exception handling cannot be explained in a single 10 to 12 minute video. It will take some time, so I'm going to divide it into 4 or 5 8 to 10 minute videos, and hopefully by the end of that you will have a very good idea on what exception handling is, how it can be properly done, and what is the benefit of handling exceptions in Java. Okay, without further ado, let's delve into this video. So here we are going to talk about the hierarchy of exceptions. Okay, but before that, let me tell you why exception handling is important. Let's say when you run your code and there is a faulty logic in your code. Okay, for example, you're iterating through an array and you try to access an index which is not there. For example, your array contains 5 elements, so your indices will run from 0 to 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if I try to access the 5th index, right, if I say, let's say the array is A and I say A of 5, your program will basically throw an error called as array index out of bound exception. Now why does this occur? Because your code will see that, okay, I'm trying to access something which is not there, and it's an index which is not existing in the array, so I have to handle this particular ask somehow. And the way Java handles that is by throwing out this exception saying that, okay, you're trying to access something which does not exist, and this is the reason, because the array index is out of bound. Your indexes are running from 0 to 4 and you're trying to access 5, which is not there. Okay, so when you have certain logical issues or when you have system resource failures, your JVM will handle that using exceptions and errors. Now let's classify these exceptions. Okay, the root class for exceptions and errors is throwable. Okay, just like the object is the root class of all classes in Java, even throwable has the root class as object, but for the world of exceptions and errors, throwable is the root class or the topmost class. Okay, under throwable you have two types. One is called as exception and one is called as error. Okay, under exception you have multiple exceptions. For example, IO exception. Okay, you have what else is there? Class not found exception. Okay, so likewise there will be many exception classes that were built which extend your exception class. Okay, and there is runtime exception. Okay, when error, you have stack overflow error. Okay, and then you have out of memory error, which is quite common. Okay, then you have, what else do you have? VM errors. Okay, virtual machine error. Okay, so likewise there will be other classifications of errors as well. Okay, I'm just stating the ones that come to my mind, but there are many more. Now what is the difference between exception and error? Right, one fundamental difference that you can see right from looking at the types of exceptions and errors is that one of them is because of failure to have system resources appropriately available. Right, stack overflow error will happen when your stack, which is a data structure, is not able to store anymore. Right, it ran out of space to store something. Correct. Out of memory is also something similar. You run out of memory or you run out of JVM heap memory to store objects. Okay, VM error is also some sort of error which happens with the virtual machines. Okay, so all these are not because of something that you have written. It is indirectly because of something you have written, but it is not exactly because of your logic. Okay, those kind of errors, they are called as errors because they are actually errors with the system, and that is thrown out by the Java virtual machine, and those are called as errors in Java. Okay, exceptions on the other hand occur because of your logic. Exactly. For example, when I say IO exception, right, if I scroll up a little bit, I can show you that we have written throws IO exception. Why? Because we are trying to access something with regards to file output stream or file input stream, right? When you're dealing with file, it's always an input output operation, and because you're dealing with it, you're saying it can throw an IO exception. Okay. Class not found exception is also because of the logic that we write. For example, we try to typecast in this case, right? We are trying to get the object to read, and we are typecasting it to employee age object, and if this class does not exist, it is going to throw a class not found exception. Okay, so anything to do with your logic will be classified as an exception, and anything to do with the system resource unavailability or because of the problem with the resources allocation will be termed as an error. Okay, if this difference is clear, let me go ahead and explain you the two types of exceptions. So you have these exceptions classes, right? IO exception, class not found, runtime, all these extend exception, but within these, runtime exception is quite special, because in runtime exception you have something called null pointer exception. Okay, even SQL exception will come here in the under exceptions. Okay, so there is that. Now runtime exception is null pointer exception, or you get any exception that happens when you execute your program is called as a runtime exception, and these are called as unchecked exceptions. Okay, the reason they're called unchecked is because at compilation time, your compiler JVM compiler will not know that this exception can be thrown. Okay, the array index out of bound exception, for example, index out of bound exception. Okay, so these are called unchecked because these can happen only when the logic is executed by your code at runtime. When I try to access the array element of 5, I will not know that in compile time. When I run the code and it sees that okay, he's accessing a of 5, and then it will go and check whether a of 5 exists, and if it does not, it will throw the array index out of bound exception. So that's why they are called as unchecked, and they extend the runtime exception class, whereas runtime exception itself extends the exception which extends the throwable class. So this is the hierarchy that you have to be very careful about. Okay, these exceptions are called as checked exceptions, meaning when your code compiles, right, it will automatically identify that these are exceptions that can be thrown by your code. That is the reason why you have the throws keyword in Java. So as soon as I remove this, right, let me show you what will happen. And because I'm using something which can throw these exceptions, right, if I remove it, it will show an error. See, it states that okay, this is an unhandled exception because there is a possibility that it can throw a file exception, right, input output exception. So I'll have to add it to the method signature, file not found exception. Here it is also, it's saying it can throw an IO exception. When I say IO exception, file not found will also come under IO exception. That's why it gets replaced by one single banner called IO exception. I have already pointed this out in the last video. I'm just reiterating it. Yeah. So these are called as checked because as soon as I remove it, it compiles and it identifies, okay, there is a exception that can be thrown. You have to add it here. Okay. So with that out of the way, I have given you the classifications. I have given you the differences between exceptions and errors. I have given you the different types of runtime exceptions. Okay. So if you're clear with this concept, in the next video, I will go ahead and explain you how exceptions can be handled in Java. Okay, using the different mechanisms that we have, the try, catch, throw, throws, finally, and how they all gel well together. Okay, hope you like this video. If you liked it, do hit the like button. Subscribe to Code with Ani if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.